If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, well, aging.
In wrapping up episode 117, Well-Centered Fitness, or SPIES, as your friend Jay labeled it. SPIES stands for spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social wellness. We promised an episode on well-centered fitness, and I think this one should be the one.
I believe you commented that SPIES was like 007. Zero excuses, zero whining.
7 days a week, something like that.
We suggest that to be well-centered and to age well, we need to focus on gratitude.
Gratitude with 2 T's, an attitude of gratitude.
Always an attitude of gratitude.
We need to make it a daily habit.
We do.
And just how do we do that?
Great question for this episode of the Aging Well podcast. I think everyone is going to have their own approach.
Well, we have to make it personal.
Exactly. You know, I don't like lists of things you must do, but we can examine the things that we can do to make a habit of gratitude, well-centered fitness, and
aging well. Developing an attitude of gratitude and fostering spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social growth can certainly lead to a more fulfilling and balanced life. Where do we start?
Well, I think it begins with one's morning routine. I like to start my day with exercise and journaling. And again, these become rather personal activities.
So talk to me about journaling. What do you journal about?
It depends. And some days are a little bit better. Some weeks are better than others. Generally, I like to start off with goals for each of the SPIES categories, spiritual goal, physical goal, intellectual, emotional, and social. I will start with kind of writing out my mission statement and my values. So my mission statement is basically, my mission is to faithfully honor and love my God, my family, and my neighbors, to pursue growth in all dimensions of life, and to have a positive impact on the lives of others. And then I also write out my value statement, which I value faith, family, friends, growth, health, and impacting others. Kind of written it out so it's like the 3 F's, GHI. So it's a little bit easier to kind of remember. So I'll write those out, and then I also sometimes write what my opportunities for the day. And I try to focus when I'm doing the opportunities is kind of take the kind of have to get kind of perspective, that I get to do these certain things. And then I just kind of write a little bit about kind of what's going on in my head and what's going on for the day, maybe a little bit of what happened the previous day, just trying to reset my gratitude and just try and start the day with as much of a positive impact as I can.
And that's part of your daily routine?
Pretty much my daily routine. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because, we're huge advocates for people getting into their own routine, especially first thing in the morning. It builds that structure and that good foundation. And it seems to me that if that's part of your daily routine, you're kind of really setting yourself up for success. It's not so begrudging. Oh man, I have to go to work. I get to go to work. I get another day. I get to drive. I get to have this opportunity where it will be a lesson learned, even though it may be something that I don't necessarily want to do. I still get that opportunity that a lot of people don't have. And that's a really cool mindset if you think about it. And that's a good lesson for someone who's trying to age well, because at some point we all have to go through that. But to get there shows huge I think that shows huge growth. I think it also shows a level of character that a lot of people they don't stop and think and reflect on that. So that's thanks for sharing that. That's pretty cool.
Well, a lot of it is my acknowledgement of the fact that I need to do these things. And so trying to put myself in a positive attitude helps me to deal with my natural negativity, if that's the way to phrase it. What do you do in your morning routine?
Part of my morning routine is I wake up and the first thing I do is I go to a little quiet area and I read a Bible verse and I read the entire verse and I find just one phrase in that verse. And I'm a part of a men's group and I just kind of text that phrase to the group of men and say, hey, this is the message I got out of this one phrase out of that entire verse. And then I just kind of sit on that and I reflect on that. I meditate on that all day and just hold on to that message. And I started doing that recently. That wasn't something that was always a part of my routine, but ever since I started doing that, my mindset of just letting things go that are unnecessary, I think you call it haval, the miss. Yeah. It just things that used to stress me out or cause me anxiety. It's all irrelevant, and it is showing a level of appreciation of, wow, I really am blessed. Like this life is crazy and it's got its ups and downs and it is one thrill of a roller coaster. But if you look at all of your blessings and you count your blessings, it helps me. I don't know. It helps me kind of not only carpe memento, seize the moment, but just take on the entire day and just kick ass and take names.
And sometimes, I start the day, my goal is to kind of start the day as positive as possible because I know I'm going to get kicked down a little bit. Sometimes before I even get on the highway, a lot of that positivity has started to shift toward the negativity. But if I can keep it as much above the neutral as possible, then it's a little bit easier to make it through the day and to kind of stay positive. And the exercising helps too, because that just kind of helps me to kind of get the body kicked in and, do what activity I can because I don't know what the day is going to bring. And so I do the exercise first thing in the morning, which is for me lifting weights, and then cardio will generally be done more in the afternoon. So what are some suggestions for our listeners so they can become spies like us?
Well, going off of what I was talking about, how I kind of just reflect on that Bible reading, I think that we can start with a meditation of mindfulness. It's important to practice daily meditation and mindfulness to connect with your inner self. Now, whether you're getting that mindfulness from reading scripture or you're just in tune with your own, like what state you're in, it's important to reflect on that.
Yeah, I think it's that is James Allen, one of my favorite writers, would write. He often wrote that As a Man Thinketh is one of his most famous books. And it kind of goes off of the Bible verse that a man is as he thinks. And so if you think the positive thoughts, you think that you have opportunities in your day, you think that what you are doing is impactful or going to be impactful, you're going to be more impactful. You're going to be more positive. You're going to be at least starting your day off a lot better. So a lot of it is just, again, having that gratitude with two T's in our head.
Well, it's also, and we've mentioned it in previous podcasts, I've said it several times, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're correct, right?
And I think it's valuable to reflect on the positive aspects of your life during these sessions. And I think we can do is to keep a journal. And you might call that a gratitude journal, if you will.
So maintain a gratitude journal to record things you are thankful for each day.
I like the idea of journaling for the purpose of tracking my well-centered fitness. I reflect on the spiritual significance of these moments, but also use journaling for the purpose of goal setting and looking forward as well as back. I'll often include, as I mentioned, a list of opportunities for the day ahead. Sometimes this is looking at things I dread doing as positives instead of negatives.
And that's really interesting because again, that changes your mindset, right? Oh man, I have to do this to, oh, I get to do this. This is an opportunity. I say this all the time. We don't make mistakes. We just make learning opportunities. That way you're not beating yourself up and you're like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. You can just chalk it up to say, well, lesson learned. I'm not going to do that anymore. Right.
Yeah.
We often talk about social engagement for aging well. I believe it is important to engage in spiritual or community activities that align with your beliefs. Attending a religious or spiritual gathering can help foster a sense of connection.
And of course, here on the Aging Well podcast, we regularly discuss the importance of establishing a consistent exercise routine that includes both cardiorespiratory and strength training. It's important that you have an exercise routine to find activities you enjoy to make it sustainable.
But emphasizing that the exercise routine must include progressive overload and some degree of periodization.
Of course, in periodization, I think a lot of people tend to think that is just something for sport, but it's important for any of us that are attempting to age well to have a program that varies over the course of time. I'm not a big proponent of kind of this exercise chaos where you're never doing the same thing in any 2 consecutive workouts. I do think that it benefits us to have a period of consistency, to work a progression within that cycle, perhaps do a deload or do something to change the exercise, because then that novelty of the exercise has benefits of increasing the stimulus for gains. But also, for anyone that's not aware of what periodization is, it's basically cycling the exercise over a period of time. And for most, it's going to be like a year, especially if you're an athlete. But, for the average person that doesn't have a target to their fitness, to where they're doing some kind of competition or something, it's just the idea of you're going to have a period where you're maybe focusing a bit more on hypertrophy, then maybe you're focused on strength, and you're focused on power. Maybe you have a period where you're focused on muscle endurance. So you're varying up the intensities that you're doing, the volumes of exercise that you're doing, and the exercises that you're doing. But do that in like a cycle where maybe you start, beginning of a cycle, you're doing 3 sets of an exercise for 10 repetitions. The next week, you're going to jump that up to maybe 4 sets, and you go up to 5 sets, and then you back off a little bit and you go up again. And that allows us to have ample recovery, particularly as we're older. I think we need a little bit more of that cycling of the exercise. We've talked a lot in the past about like the 5x5 program and how good that can be for beginners. But you kind of get to a point where if you continue to progress that, you're going to be really overloading, overstressing the joints. It becomes impossible to really increase the weights that much. And it kind of gets to a point where it might be better to kind of ramp up those 5 sets. You start kind of near your minimum effective volume, and you do, 5 total sets where you get up to your maximum, where you're pushing it really hard, and either maybe you back off, do some, more reps at a lighter weight, or you just simply stop at that and go to the next exercise. But changing up the programming of the exercise and what we're doing on a fairly regular basis, but not all the time, is going to have some really huge benefits for the aging exerciser.
Is that like, I don't know if this would fall into that category of some definition of homeostasis, like you're just adding a different type of stress to the body, and then now the body's going to be adapting to that. And so now you've adapted to that, and then you switch it up and you add a different workout routine. And so you went from this one adaptation, and now you're transitioning into this other adaptation. So your body's constantly getting thrown into a cycle to adapt to its full potential.
There's a part of that, and that's a little bit more like what Charles Francis referred to as vertical integration. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get pretty technical here in terms of periodization, but with vertical integration, you're kind of looking at varying, you're always working kind of all systems of adaptation. You're working strength, you're working hypertrophy, you're working power, speed, whatever it might be, but you're varying up where that primary focus is as you move. And this is more for athletes than it is for probably the average aging adult, but you are working toward that specific goal. So for an athlete, you have a period of hypertrophy. You're still kind of doing some hypertrophy work, but you start adding a little bit more strength. Then you start getting a little bit more sport specific, and then you're getting very performance specific at the end of that. And then you kind of repeat the cycles. For somebody who's just kind of looking to get in good general health, we can't work everything in our body that needs to be improved upon in every workout. And so we tend to focus on the things that need the most work, build those up, and then maybe shift to another focus for another cycle. But we're still maintaining the gains that we've made in that particular previous cycle. And with periodization, it tends to have what would be considered a potentiation effect, where what we do in a previous cycle carries over into the next cycle. So if I do hypertrophy, I build muscle, that gives me a greater capacity to be able to lift heavier things, to get stronger. And that strength feeds back into my ability to get more hypertrophy. And so that's where that progressive overload comes into exercise, and why it's important that even for just the average aging adult to be trying to get stronger. Again, we're not looking at becoming power lifters and Olympic lifters. We're just looking at having greater functionality as we age, or at least maintaining that by maintaining muscle mass, trying to build muscle mass, trying to build some strength. And that's going to carry over in the other things that we can do. Think about it. If I have more muscular strength and have some level of hypertrophy, I can do more cardiovascular type of exercise. I'm going to be able to maintain that higher intensity. I'm going to still be able to walk a little bit faster. I'm going to be able to hike. I'm going to be able to do things that are going to allow me to age well.
Well, not only that, but I feel like with switching up your routine and adding that periodization, not only are you going to have the physical capabilities of doing that, but I think you're also adding a little bit of a mental factor in of you realizing that you have the physical capabilities, that you can do it. I think by switching up your routine so much and adding that periodization, I think you're doing wonders for your own psyche and your confidence. I was actually listening to one of Andrew Huberman's podcasts, and he talked about how individuals that challenge themselves through workout, or those that really focus on just any daily challenge and then overcome it, whether it's their dietary needs, whether it's getting placed on, whether it's going through a workout routine, whether it's doing something that's uncomfortable for them and it's out of their norm. There's a part of their brain called the anterior mid-frontal cortex, and that will actually grow as we place ourselves in challenging situations. For people that don't put themselves in those challenging systems or in those challenging situations, their mid-frontal or anterior mid-frontal cortex is actually a lot smaller than someone that's challenging themselves every day. And then these huge obstacles that come in front of us, they don't seem that big. And so I think just by switching up your workout routine, you're not only getting the physical benefits, you're getting the mental benefits as well.
And I would argue too, you're getting the spiritual benefits as well. That's why I feel like this idea of the SPIES, the spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social approach to well-centered fitness, all fits in together. And I think the two foundational pieces are the spiritual and the physical, and we can't separate the two. And you can get into a lot of kind of theological and metaphysical and all that, and quantum physics and all that kind of stuff to pull those together even further. But, like you were saying, if I have that physical capacity and that feeling that I'm capable of doing things, I'm going to be able to engage more in the spiritual side of well-centered fitness, because the whole premise of the spiritual is that there's something bigger than self. And so if I'm focused on bettering myself for the sake of others, being other-centered, then I'm going to be able to be more other-centered, and so that everything kind of fits in together. And like you said, if I feel more confident, I'm going to be better emotional, I'm going to be better intellectual, and I'm also going to interact better with others. And so the physical, the spiritual, they all really, really fit together.
I think there's a saying that goes with that. I think it goes, when the natural and the supernatural come together, it's an unstoppable force. So
I've not heard that one before, but it's a good quote.
Along with exercise, we also emphasize healthy eating habits. Adopt a balanced and nutritious diet to support your physical well-being, stay hydrated, and minimize processed foods.
And of course, spies like us have a regular sleep pattern.
Of course, spies like us get adequate rest. We prioritize sufficient sleep to allow your body to recover and rejuvenate.
And I would kind of point the listener back to our recent interview with the Kleonskis and talking about dementia health and that importance really of sleep and quality sleep in terms of minimizing our risk of dementia. But, it's also going to have impacts on our cortisol levels, our ability to maintain a healthy body composition, to be able to wake up and to do the gratitude journaling that we want to do first thing in the morning without, hitting the snooze button all the time, get up and exercise, do the intellectual things we want to do to grow our brains, to have a little bit more positivity in our life, to be more emotionally well-centered, and also just to interact better with people socially. If you're falling asleep, it's kind of hard to maintain a quality conversation with somebody. You start zoning out, you start dozing off on them. That doesn't go very well.
No. And a lot of people, they have undiagnosed sleep apnea.
Yeah.
And that last interview that we just did, man, that was really eye-opening, the impacts that sleep apnea has not only on your mental state, but your physical well-being altogether.
Yeah, we need that sleep. So we got to, we talk about having a regular bedtime, getting up at a fixed time. Literature has shown that it's that consistency of sleep that's going to be a big factor in aging well. But allowing our body time to recover from the other things that we're trying to adapt and to grow. And, we also want to, for spies like us, we want to emphasize our intellectual growth. And as an academic, of course, I am going to emphasize the importance of continuous learning. Read books, articles, engage in courses to expand your knowledge, embrace a kind of curious mindset, and seek to learn something new regularly. As we seek to age well, we need to challenge ourselves to think critically and question assumptions and engage in productive discussions and debates to refine our intellectual skills. So part of our daily routine should be to establish both short-term and long-term goals for activities to keep the mind focused and motivated. I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
Emotional growth requires an increasing self-awareness. Our daily routine or gratitude journal should include a practiced self-reflection to understand your emotions and reactions.
Although I don't practice it as often as I would like, meeting that bedtime sometimes makes it difficult. I like to include an end of the day reflection in my journaling practice. I like to end this by writing down a quote or a thought to guide me into a positive sleep.
We're talking about personal reflection and meditation practices. But it's also important for us to develop healthy ways to express your emotions, such as through art writing, or even conversations.
And to understand that it's okay to seek professional help if needed for our emotional well-being.
We also need to be on the giving side of empathy and compassion.
And the best way to cultivate empathy is by putting yourself in others' shoes. So, and again, I think that returns to that spiritual component as well. Being that other-centered nature to yourself.
There's a really cool video out there. It's free and available on YouTube, and a lot of work, a lot of professionals that are out there, they're utilizing it as part of their training, but they break down the difference between empathy and sympathy. And I thought they went hand in glove, but they don't. Empathy is you're meeting that person on that level, and you may not always connect or know exactly what it is that they're going through, but you can recognize that they are going through a hard time, and you may not have the answers, but you know you need to be there to support them. Sympathy is like, oh man, yeah, I've been there. I can sympathize with that, and I can meet you, but you're in a weird roundabout way trying to one up that individual, and that it's kind of counterproductive for someone's mental and emotional health. So with that being said, part of cultivating empathy is expressing that compassion for one another. A great way to do this is by volunteering and engaging in activities to foster your compassion for others.
And how do we go about doing that?
Well, it's all about building relationships, right? It's about life experience, and it's connecting with people. If someone that you barely know comes to you with a hard problem, it's going to be hard to make that connection with them, right? But obviously that person is coming to you because they trust you. Whatever it is about you, they trust you, and you need to take the trust that they're gifting you, and you need to have compassion for that. That person is clearly needing help, and you may not have the answers, but it's okay. They're coming to you for that reason.
And I think it's important to understand that volunteering isn't necessarily, signing up for, these big elaborate things. Yes, it's great to do like Habitat for Humanity, or, volunteering at the soup kitchen, or, volunteering at your child's school, doing those types of things. But volunteering is also just simply offering your help to somebody that is in need. Opening the door for people is a lost art. We don't see people. I hate when I walk through a door and a person walks in front of me and they just kind of push the door open, they squeeze their body through, and they let go of the door. And I got to catch it before it smacks me in the face. To me, that just reeks of inconsiderateness. It's just you open a door, you kind of look back, make sure there's nobody else coming through before you let it close. That's kind of an act of volunteering that helps to build that compassion. It's just showing that you're aware of other people. I've been in crowded situations where, you have to kind of move your way through, and you're asking people, excuse me, to be able to move through. And, they can't be bothered to hear you or be aware of you to just simply move. And I think there's a certain element of that in having compassion for others, to understand that everybody has needs. What can I do to service those needs? That's, again, volunteering isn't necessarily, and there's a lot of people that volunteer that aren't other-centered. They're doing that volunteer work for themselves. Mm-hmm. It could be that they get some reward from it. They get recognition, or they can put it on their resume or whatever it might be, but they're getting a reward for it rather than doing it for the sake of others. And some of the best volunteering is the things that we do for others that get unnoticed.
That's really well said. Wow, that's beautiful. Well, and you're right, though. It is kind of it's a lost art. It's weird how manners are slowly withering away. You don't really see it. Have you been to the grocery store lately?
I let Pam do all the grocery shopping.
People are
going to the grocery store.
People are rude. They are. This is a true story. My wife and I, we were literally at the grocery store, and I was like, man, people are kind of rude. They're like pushing us out of the way to grab stuff. And You can't just say, oh, excuse me, I need to grab that, or hey, coming by you. No. And we're literally just in an aisle. All we're doing is we're just standing. We're looking for something specific. And I can't remember exactly what it was. And they had an employee come up as they're pushing their little stocking cart and bump into my wife and kind of push her aside. And my wife's like, are you going to say sorry? And they're like, oh, I didn't see you there. And then I kind of lost it a little bit. I was like, well, how did you not see us? We're the only ones here. What do you mean? And they go, yeah, you jumped in my way. And it's like, what? You're not even going to own this? It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much of a lost art it is. And I get it because I had an experience, ironically, when I was in college. I went to hold the door open for someone and I got yelled at. They took it as a sign of offense, and I don't know why. And for a while, because of that experience that I had, I kind of stopped holding the door open for people. And then eventually I got over that fear, and I still to this day, if someone's come up behind me, I hold the door open for them. If I see someone, carrying something, whether it's inside of a building or they're moving into the apartments in our apartment complex and it's too much of a load, I'll run over. I'm like, hey, can I help you? Right. There's nothing wrong with helping each other, helping your community, helping your neighbors, and just reaching out that hand and say, hey, I'm here for you.
And I think part of being spies like us is to recognize that you're doing an injustice to a person by denying them that opportunity to show you that gratitude, attitude of gratitude, to give you the opportunity to help them out. And it's not a sign of weakness to accept help from somebody when they're being courteous to you. Somebody opens a door for you, and I know a lot of females in particular take it personally that, it's like, well, I'm quite capable of opening the door myself. And it's like, no kidding. Of course you are. But it shows me that I can be a more compassionate person, that I am being other-centered. I am helping you, even though you don't need the help. And I welcome people holding the door for me. I mean, I've had little old ladies hold the door open for me, and I'm grateful for that. I don't turn to them and say, look, I'm an old lady. I can open the door better than you can. We have to be understanding that people aren't putting you down by offering to help you. They're elevating you by being willing to help you.
Well, that's also, it kind of shows growth and appreciation on both sides, right? The individual doing the kind deed, it shows them that they are capable of doing that kind deed. And it really makes them like, wow, that was a good feeling helping this person out. But the person receiving the help, I know it sounds crazy, but a lot of people out there, including myself, they have a hard time receiving help or receiving gifts. So when someone is doing something out of the kindness of their heart and they want to do that for you, having the ability to accept that, it's part of that growing process. It's part of aging well.
And I think this is a great segue into the SPIES habit for social growth. I think it's critical for our well-centered fitness to nurture those meaningful connections with family, friends, and I would argue even strangers, and surround ourselves with positive and supportive people. We need to be working on effective communication, something I think is sorely lacking in our world of social media. Spies like us need to continually work on enhancing our communication skills to express ourselves clearly and effectively, and I would say gracefully as well.
We need to listen actively and empathetically to others. We can also develop a social well-centeredness by building a diverse network of contacts to expose ourselves to different perspectives. We can attend events to engage in professional or social communities.
We can also build our environment of excellence, as Jim Harshaw Jr. refers to it.
Jim Harshaw, that was your interview in episode 22?
It was. And as Jim Rohn says, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with.
So choose your friends wisely. So, SPIES is an overall lifestyle. We want to strive for balance in all aspects of life, avoiding extremes. We want to practice moderation in both work and leisure activities. Allocate a time for self-reflection and evaluation of your progress, and adjust your strategies and goals based on your reflection. Incorporate gratitude practices into your daily routine, acknowledging the positive aspects of your life. Express gratitude to others, strengthening your social bonds. Remember, personal growth is a continuous journey. Find what works best for you. Adapt these suggestions to fit your unique needs and circumstances. If you do, you can be a well-centered SPIES and age well.
Age well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.